This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles,
who is joining us here. And Greg, we're going to get to what was the story of the game once again with Drake Maye, and it's almost getting boring because he's almost the only thing not the only thing worth talking about, but it's so clearly what's going right for this team right now. Just finishing the conversation we were having with Taylor and Mike a minute ago. Were you surprised Travion Henderson got completely shut out of the game plan here? I'm not in the sense that I don't think we've seen anything from him that merits more playing time, but this felt like almost like capitulation. Like kid's not doing what we want right now. Let's just not use him at all. Let's not pretend anymore until he can figure it out.
Yeah. So speaking of Prize Picks, one of my selections was this sort of being the Travion Henderson breakout game with, I think I picked him more than 55 yards receiving and running. I thought we might see him, pop one in this game. And he was the only one that prevented me from cashing in. My other three picks, Harold Landry, sack, a booty, like over 35 receiving yards. And there was one more that I had, but all I needed was the Henderson. So I'm a little bit bitter towards Josh McDaniels, right now. But I will say, so I'm just looking at PFF. Travion Henderson played 9 snaps.
9 snaps.
5. So basically it was distributed 5. He was in passing. He pass blocked once, which was not good, by the way. He again allowed pressure against Drake Maye. From what I remember, got an initial good block, but just couldn't sustain the block. And I don't know if Maye got hit, but he certainly got hurried on the play. 2 rushes, and he blocked once in the running game, probably like an end around situation. So to him, first of all, I am surprised. Like I said, I thought this might be the Henderson breakout game. I thought the Patriots, especially considering I thought they would win this game comfortably, and they ended up doing it after a while, even though it was a little uncomfortable for much of this game, at least the first half. I thought that they would use the opportunity in, say, the fourth quarter to get them some work, maybe get them into a rhythm, that sort of thing. And that did not happen. I was shocked they're putting Terrell Jennings out there instead of Travion Henderson. Just from watching the film and somewhat knowing how these guys operate. And again, this would be a lot of people are going to want to put this on Josh McDaniels. I would say certainly Mike Vrabel is the final call in terms of playing time. He might be saying, like, I can't trust that guy to pass protect. We're not doing that with Drake Maye. Tony Dews, the running back coach, also has a say in this as far as how the playing time is distributed. But I would just say that my opinion is that they are saying, and I defer to what the coaches do. They see the practices. They see a lot more than we do. There is always a reason why a player does or does not play. And what it tells me is the coaches do not have confidence in Travion Henderson in a variety of ways right now, and they're not comfortable putting him on the field. And that's not going to change until they see it on the practice field, that he makes the most of his opportunities against the Titans, which I didn't think he did. I thought he also ran into blockers. By the way, PFF on their initial in-game grading, Travion Henderson is the lowest rated player on the Patriots offense.
The entire offense. And I will say, and again, I don't want to make this a referendum on the Patriots drafting, but the second lowest player is Kyle Williams on PFF's initial grading here, which again, the one opportunity we saw Drake Maye try to throw to him, he sailed his only incompletion in the first half over his head, because he was as covered can possibly be. So you're not seeing anything, despite reports out of Foxboro that he's doing a lot of good things really behind the scenes. It's just he's not getting the ball. I don't know, Greg. I kind of feel like if he was wide open on the snaps that he was there, that Maye would find him. So I'm not going to freak out yet.
Yeah, but I will say
these are two guys that could have brought an explosive element to the offense, even in splashes. And right now you're got zero out of them through
I know. And a lot of people will, make this point.
We're impatient.
Like, why did you draft him that high? And what, you just have to have patience with young players. They all hit at a different rate in terms of, when they hit the ground running. Some are great right off the bat. I would use the example of, if you think Travion Henderson is struggling and you use a second round pick, how do you feel the Raiders feel with Ashton Genty at this point, who the times that I've seen him this year, he runs into the backs of a lot of blockers and is really, really struggling to find holes, to get into a rhythm, to understand the speed of the pro game. And I'm all of a sudden, am I going to say, I'm sure some people will, am I going to say that Ashton Genty is a bust after 7 weeks? No, because he could be a beast down the stretch. Right now, for whatever reason, Travion Henderson is struggling. And Kyle Williams is as well a little bit, even though I thought he was coming on, even though he wasn't getting the ball, the receptions, he was getting closer, he was getting open. But I understand the impatience. I understand you want people to hit. Really, if you look at it, second round, third round, first round guys, you're expecting them to contribute immediately as an NFL starter. Second round, you expect them to contribute eventually at some point, hopefully become a starter within the first year or two. And then third round, you're expecting them to carve out a role and sometime in the next couple of years, possibly develop into a starter. So I don't think in general where they are right now it's not a huge disappointment to me. I know it is to some of the fans. I would just be patient because these young kids, they can hit at a moment's notice. I mean, look at what we did look at Drake Maye from where he was from week
Segue
1
alert
to week 7. Yes.
Yeah. Prize Picks, and everybody knows about Prize Picks. There it is on the screen. Number 1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. And again, you want to put your opinions to use here. You want to get paid for being right. Go to Prize Picks. Check it out. This episode and all episodes brought to you by Prize Picks. Download that app. Use code CLNS50 instantly when you play 5. Once again, download the app and get 50 instantly in your lineups when you play 5 using the code CLNS. A lot of great promotional offers here already. I think we've got a Steph Curry free square as professional basketball gets underway coming up beginning of next week. I think that game is Tuesday. Celtics get their schedule underway as well, so that should be a lot of fun. So again, check it out. Use that code CLNS and put your opinions to good use. Prize Picks, baby. It is good to be right. Segue alert. Let's get into it. And again, look, but the thing is with Drake Maye, despite the results not being there and the turnovers being crushing last year in terms of results, you still saw pretty early like what he had, but it just keeps getting better at this point. And so, Greg, this is another example. Again, I think last week you wrote this was all about Drake Maye. Are you just going to cut and paste the story for this week again?
I might. I don't know. I mean, look, this was historically the most accurate quarterbacked game in team history. And I mean, who am I to argue with that? And they had sort of a pretty good quarterback here, before, but he's insane. I mean, I was just looking, and this could change because of game charting and things like that. But and I think we talked about this last week. Drake Maye's completion percentage over expected is right now it's plus 24.4. Right now, that is this week. That's just for this game.
Yeah.
That is the second best in the NFL this season to Sam Darnold in week 5, which was just I don't even think a full percentage point better. So we're talking about, according to the advanced analytics, this was one of the best quarterback games in the NFL this year. And it seems like we almost say it every other week. And what I really liked, John, was, when I went back and looked at it, and certainly Drake played really well last week. There were some issues in the second half, and including, some of his footwork got a little bit wonky, and you're just like,
you said he got cocky.
Yeah, he got cocky, started doing some of the stuff he did at UNC, and you're like, oh, is this a byproduct of them just relying on him too much? And it's just the Drake Maye offense and sort of cowboy Josh Allen type of thing. But just to the, watching it today, it looked like he made all those corrections and he was back to being completely comfortable and doing mostly the right things. Some of protecting himself and other things, not so great. But for him to keep making the corrections and getting better week after week, that's the thing that's really abnormal for a player of his inexperience and his age.
Yeah. So again, how much of what's happening around right now, like, we're talking about it with Taylor and Mike, guys helped him out today. Booty makes a great fingertip grab. That the touchdown catch by Hooper was terrific. They're coming back over the top. Pop Douglas, though he might have, maybe he was supposed to sit on that route, still makes a ridiculous catch on fourth down coming back. That stuff makes a big difference too. Is that kind of a byproduct of the vibe that he's creating, which is guys are stepping up and making plays? Because you didn't see that as much last year. And, a lot of the personnel is similar outside of Stephon Diggs with what he had around him. Obviously, the benefit of having a little bit more time in the line protecting better than it did last year gets him in a place where he can settle down. He's not as scattered, with what's going on. But just overall, like, you are getting good contributions from the people around him. How are you feeling like now about this? And you've said it. He's got enough weapons. Like, you feel okay about this group. You still feel pretty good about it. You think that he's elevating their games, or they're just kind of, coming into their own a little bit on their own?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything, John. And I do think that they, have enough. I think, if they can get the running game going, and what I thought was really good today was, I think at the end of the day, and I'm no math major, trust me, that's my wife. I think the running backs ended up with 25 rushes, and Drake Maye ended up with 25 dropbacks, including the 2 sacks. So if they're at their best when they can stay in that range. And so as far as, Drake, do I think he's certainly elevating guys around him. He's making plays. I mean, that throw along the sideline to Stephon Diggs was just outrageous. I mean, just dropped in a bucket. I mean, great job by Diggs being a pro and showing laid hands and that kind of thing. But even if he stuck his hands out, it was still going to be completed because it was that good. And he does a lot of those things. That's why his completion rate over expected is so high now week after week. But also, I mean, look, they have the ability to get different guys involved. I mean, what they have 8 different pass catchers today, or at least 8 guys who got targeted. I think 7 caught passes. Kyle Williams is the only one who didn't. Stevenson was 2 for 0, which is weird. But I really like this offense. I know people want a number 1 and all that, and I certainly wouldn't turn one down, but I really like this offense in terms of the defense can't really key in on anybody on any down. Yeah, sure, he's going to look to Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs a little bit more on third down, but we see Pop Douglas make that ridiculous catch on fourth down. That was a huge play in the game. I mean, if they don't convert there, the Titans get a lift. Who knows? It was only, I think, a 4-point. I think it was 17-13 at that point.
Yeah.
So I think everybody's doing a great job in the passing offense, including the protection's okay. It was certainly
you're still kind of down here. Like, like you still think they're the guys are getting a lot of help and the protection's not great, because that's what's weird here. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the advanced analytics and a lot of the stuff that you're saying about the protection here. Because right now they're ranked as one of the top 5 pass blocking units in the NFL, which seems, and again, I think a lot of that has to do with Maye. I think the quarterback can elevate an offensive line just by, not allowing the sacks or feeling the pressure or escaping with his legs, for sure. But you're still not as bullish as maybe some of the other, film watchers and analytic guys out there in terms of how these guys are doing.
Yeah. Look, is it a lot better than it was last year? Yes. Yeah. And do I like the personnel across the board? And, I kind of feel bad for Jared Wilson because, left guard is not his position. And he got victimized today. He had a tough time. We should also note that Jeffrey Simmons did not play most of this game, or at least the final
went out in the second quarter. Yep.
it's been okay. Will Campbell had his struggles today. There was one of those sacks where he late where Drake Maye almost got killed, and for whatever reason, Drake Maye dropped blocked down instead of out. I don't know what the protection is. Maybe that guy was designed to be free and on Maye, and they slanted the protection to the right on that play. I'm not sure, and I'll have to go back and watch the film. But I thought, Campbell had some iffy moments today. He had there was I can recall at least one stuff where Stevenson, I think, was dropped for -2, and like 3 or 4 guys missed the block, including Campbell missed the big one. But it's been acceptable and certainly a vast improvement over last year because of the Josh McDaniels factor. And I talked about this going into the year, and maybe people now that they've watched week after week, they could see what I was talking about in terms of Josh McDaniels' ability to call different pitches. And what I mean by that is, not only like giving help at times and changing who's giving help and lining up a tight end over Will Campbell or not, wide zone boots. And then, sometimes it's play action where you're pulling a guard, and sometimes you're, running a trap. Like, you do all these different things, and it sort of slows up the pass rush because they don't know how they're going to be blocked on every play. Where last year against Alex Van Pelt, there were a lot of times where they would just straight drop back and they're cooked. You're not helping out the offensive line. And I was very frustrated last year with this. And now we see the vast improvement over, between Josh McDaniels and Doug Marrone and the offensive line coaches designing the blocking scheme every week. They're really helping out these guys. So when I wouldn't look at those advanced analytics as a personnel referendum, I would say it's the entire pass blocking apparatus, and that includes the coaches.
Okay, so I'm just curious on this now because I don't want to shovel dirt on someone's grave, even now that they're so far out of the public consciousness here. But if you had to rate the Patriots coaching staff this year on a scale of 1 to 10 relative to what it was last year, what are those numbers? Like, how big is that improvement right now? Is it a 10 to 1?
I mean, if you're including the head coach in this,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, just from they had 3 guys, whether it was Mayo, Van Pelt, and DeMarcus Covington, who had never really done those jobs before. Van Pelt did it for a time with the Bills in like the 90s or something, but had never really done those jobs on a full-time basis before. Now, and of course, there's issues on the defense with, Zach Kerr was supposed to be Terrell Williams, who was supposed to, he was also going to be a first-time play caller and all that stuff. So it's not perfect on that side, but between, Vrabel helping out over there, and you have Josh McDaniels on offense, and you have Doug Marrone, who's been a head coach before, and Todd Downing, who I think has done a spectacular job with the wide receivers. I mean, it's night and day where they were with coaching last year. And I feel good for the guys that didn't get completely ruined by the previous coaching staffs and were ready to take the opportunity when they got better coached. I feel bad for guys like Layden Robinson and City So and these guys who were and Mac Jones, guys who were kind of wrecked by what happened that happened in the past. But I feel good about, Kayshon Boutte, and I think Pop Douglas is going to get there eventually. And, a bunch of other guys, Rhamondre Stevenson, I think will continue to improve. Yeah. So, night and day.
Okay. Before we let Greg go on this and bring back Taylor and Mike, we did want to talk about the defense, which, again, you've been critical of, but justifiably. There's just too much going on here. And again, the Titans, you said it in our kind of, offline when we were talking about it, like things could have easily gone differently here. A couple different, balls bounced a different way. I mean, they just let the Titans, and it was similar to Carolina that ended up in a blowout. But in that first half, Carolina was just crossing midfield and getting into, and kind of the same sort of vibe here. You're letting a not great offense and a quarterback that's got issues drive the ball on you. And they got in there and they scored 3 of their first, 4 drives, tightened up a lot in the second half. And obviously that's where the game was won. But, and Cam Ward was just one of the worst type of turnovers for a touchdown you could ever fathom, with the ball just falling out of his hands at the goal line. But
Yeah.
Stuff like that doesn't happen. This is an annoyingly close game. Maybe the
Yep.
Patriots still pull it out, but the defense is not, again, you said it to me. How worried are we when they face someone who's even kind of good?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of the problem is, and just to recap, by the way, between Spencer Rattler last week and Cam Ward in the first half, those two quarterbacks, not exactly household names, even though from looking at Twitter, apparently Rattler played well again today. Those quarterbacks completed 31 of 42 passes. This is in 6 quarters. So the Rattler game in the first half of Cam Ward today, 31 of 42 passes. That's 74% for 375 yards, 8.9 yards per attempt. I think it was a passer rating of 108. And, you're talking about a Titans offense that didn't have Calvin Ridley, that lost one of their receivers after making a big play. Who was it? It was number 11, Van Jefferson, who got Christian Gonzalez on a big third down, a pretty good chunk play earlier in the game. So yeah, there's a lot of issues. Yes, I think anybody, we'll see whether the run game can show any sustainability, especially, if a guy like Jeffrey Simmons is in the game. But it was certainly good to see what they did in this game and in the first quarter. We'll see if that builds some confidence in everybody, including the blockers, that they can go forward. But I think anybody who's reasonable, among the fan base is looking at this being like, this defense is not good enough. It reminds me of what year was it? Oh, I guess it was like 2011 when they went to the Super Bowl, where that defense was completely horrendous in the secondary, to the point where Julian Edelman had to play slot against Anquan Bolden in the AFC Championship game. The difference is that, those guys had slappies like Sterling Moore, guys, Antoine Molden, like people you never heard of playing in the secondary. So you understood it. I mean, you have Christian Gonzalez, you have Carlton Davis, you have Marcus Jones. Yeah, they're limited at safety. I mean, a lot of it is in the middle of the field. So for me, it's the linebackers. We saw Marte Mapu do some good things today. I can't believe he led the team in tackles from what I was looking at and got his hand on some passes. I would subscribe that the interception that Marcus Jones got, that was another unforced error. Cam Ward threw behind the guy. It got tipped. Yeah. It's a problem. And I would say most of it is all in the middle of the field. And my read on it right now, and I'm not saying it's going to stay this way, and I always think that every weakness on a team, especially with good coaches, is eventually going to improve. The more they see guys, the more guys play in the system, the more they play with each other. But, the way Vrabel ran his defense in Tennessee, they didn't play a whole ton of man. And I see a defensive coaching staff that is having a tough time how to figure out how to play a lot of man, because they have 3 really good man corners. And meshing that with what they like to do as far as their pressure and some of their drops in the middle of the field. So I think it's not lacking in talent. The pass rush has been an issue when they don't bring forward. That was an issue a lot in this game. The safeties are an issue. The linebackers are an issue. But they shouldn't be having these many troubles. But they better get it solved, because one of these times they're going to go up against a real offense with a real quarterback and scheme and a lot of targets, and they're never going to be able to get off the field. And they're going to have to hope that Drake Maye puts up 50, which he might very well do at some point, or I almost expect it at this point.
Yeah, and that hasn't happened yet. You're looking at that Tampa game coming up on the schedule as one of those games where you wonder, is that going to be in the 40s, because again, it's definitely enough concerns here. And again, I know people in the chat are like, dude, what the hell are you being negative about? Like the expectation has changed now. This team's 5-2, guys. You're now talking about, can they do damage? Can they go deep? What can they do? We're not talking about pat on the butt moral victories. You're looking at, how is this team going to shape up when they actually play real competition? One of the reasons people were bullish on the Patriots this year, the schedule's historically bad. Each minute you watch the other teams that they're going to play, it gets easier. Like, look at the Dolphins, look at the Jets. Oh my God. These are just there's a bunch of layup wins in this schedule, but that's not who you're playing when you get into January. So you're trying to figure out, what do they got? But what you do know they have is Drake Maye, another phenomenal game from him. And again, we're almost running out of things to say about it. What we will say about Greg before we let him go, if you don't know already or you don't subscribe already, you should. Boston Sports Journal, $7 a month, best sports coverage in all of Boston. It's not particularly close. Terrific football coverage with, of course, Greg and Mike Giardi. Make sure you check it out. If you haven't subscribed, do it today. It's $7 a month or $50 for the year. You're not going to beat that. So check that out and then go in and read what Greg and Mike have to say about today's win as the Patriots take down the Tennessee Titans 31-13. Revenge game for Mike Vrabel. Greg, thanks a lot. We'll see you later.
Sounds good. Thanks. Good.